So there's been a lot of friction between many YouTubers, the feminists versus the anti-feminists. Many big names are involved, and while New Age feminism to me is complete and utter bullshit, I'm actually not here to talk about the content of these arguments at all. No, not about feminism or about anti-feminism. Instead, I'm actually going to be talking about a greater issue that's present in both these arguments and media at large in general, and also the hearts and minds of people across the world, which is political labeling and why it's so stifling for any progress for society and actually solving issues. And I'll get into that more in a minute, but first, watch some of these clips.
Anti-SJWs often have an aversion to being labeled as right-wing, yet they regularly defend the right and bash the left. Therefore, why is being labeled right-wing a bad thing to you? And if it's because right-wing is used as a pejorative, can you not see how labeling people as SJWs or regressives is also pejorative?
I don't think right-wing is a pejorative, it's just not accurate. I'm not right-wing at all. I'm very, very liberal on most things. The reason I bash the left is because I'm part of the left, and it bugs me to see something that I was once part of, or still kind of technically am, acting so fucking stupid.
The right has been playing a bit of a losing game by inches with the left. The left is kind of getting most of what it wants, maybe just a little slower because of the right, but there's not been a fundamental counterinsurgency against the expansion of the left.
The other L word, liberal. I've always considered myself a liberal, probably before I even knew what the word actually meant. As a kid, I remember thinking that liberals were the good guys. Liberals were looking out for other people, liberals wanted a fairer society, and liberals didn't care about race or religion. I mention all this because I don't want to lose my cred as a real liberal. Since I've had some conservative guests on the Rubin Report, I've seen people suddenly calling me a conservative or claiming that I'm a Republican.
Do you notice anything in common with all these people shown in these clips? Well, for one, they are YouTube personalities, and many of which I follow, many of which are also pretty smart and intellectual people that have a lot to say about politics and social issues. But one theme that remains constant, even amongst smart people on these issues, is their attempt to politically label or politically align themselves with a certain group. And of course, everyone's seen this on mainstream news with political pundits and people who have their own shows and platforms which are usually promoting the agenda of something that is liberal or something conservative. You can name it whatever you want, political parties, political labeling, but at its core, it's simply tribalism. And to define tribalism in this sense, I simply mean being so strongly affiliated with an ideology, a political group, or any sort of movement, so much so to the point that it becomes your team in a sense. So that means things like the right, the left, the alt-right, liberalism, conservatism, progressives, feminists, anti-feminists. Now, tribalism is actually a human instinct, and for around 99% of human civilization, it was actually very useful. Back when our ancestors were hunter-gatherers, tribalism was needed for everyone to be together, to be in groups. It was useful and beneficial to go out hunting, with your tribesmen, with your group, so that you could all work together and be on the same team to defend yourself against enemies and predators and things like that. However, when it comes to solving complicated social and political issues which can affect all of us, tribalism is actually very unproductive and pretty stupid. That's why you'll often see in political groups or in social movements one side try to demonize the other because, well, at the end of the day, it's about self-preservation and protection and safety. That's what tribalism is. That's one of the main purposes of it. It feels good to be a part of a movement and label yourself along with other supposedly like-minded people because it offers security and validation of your ideas. This clip from Sam Harris, who's a pretty well-accomplished author on consciousness, a philosopher, and a neuroscientist, sums it up perfectly.
As far as I can tell, becoming a part of a movement doesn't help anybody think clearly. So I distrust identity politics of all kinds. I think we should talk about specific issues, whether it's trade or guns or immigration or foreign interventions or abortion or anything else. And we should reason honestly about them. And I'm not the first person to notice that it's pretty strange that knowing a person's position on any one of these issues generally allows you to predict his position on the others. This shouldn't happen. Some of these issues are totally unrelated. Why should a person's attitude toward guns be predictive of his views on climate change or immigration or abortion? And yet, it almost certainly is in our society. That's a sign that people are joining tribes and movements, right? It's not the sign of clear thinking. If you're reasoning honestly about facts, then the color of your skin is irrelevant. The religion of your parents is irrelevant. Whether you're gay or straight is irrelevant. Your identity is irrelevant. In fact, if you're talking about reality, its character can't be predicated on who you happen to be. Right? That's what it means to be talking about reality.
And this is so common. People who have an opinion about one major issue or even a few major issues oftentimes fully affiliate themselves with the political party that best fits them. Even if it means siding with a bunch of preset perspectives and pushing a bunch of preset agendas that you don't necessarily have a stake in. And in the case of actual policymakers and the people who are appointed positions to make these laws, it means signing policies and laws that just benefit their party and across the board just fall in line with their party's agenda because that's what's right, because they're doing it for their party, not for the betterment of the country, and certainly not you and I, the people. This creates a herd mentality where the goal is no longer the betterment of society or solving any actual issues, but rather defeating the opponents and falling into the trap of us versus them. And it's so ridiculous to me hearing these talking heads on mainstream media, which at this point is like a dinosaur describing how, the right is correct and the left is wrong, or the left is correct and the right is wrong, and having this whole us versus them just portrayed in the most simplistic, basic and arbitrary way, just ascribing the worst values to the other side and the best values to their side, just pushing their own agenda. It's as ridiculous as red versus blue from Rooster Teeth, except in reality, it's just one side versus another and no one's solving anything. No one's actually trying to improve or solve the issues at all at the end of the day. You know what's missing from this whole equation of having one party pitted against another? Independent thought. Because guess what? Every political party, every group, every movement, every religion, not just in the US but all over the world, has some good points usually and has some really shitty points. And so if you're aligning yourself fully with any group or organization and having that herd mentality, you're selling yourself and your intellect short, because you're swallowing that pill of really bad ideas that's affiliated with your group or party just to be a part of their team. And that's why you're seeing this natural split of people who just aren't accepting the two-party system and are going off onto things called the alt-right or the regressive left or the progressive left or whatever you want to call it. But here's the problem. They're again falling into the same trap of labeling themselves and labeling their parties and being a part of this group with set values and set goals and a set agenda. But what we really need is more choices, more options, especially in the US, than just a shitty two-party system. I don't like any of the candidates. Almost everyone I talk to doesn't like either of the candidates, and it's much bigger than just this one election, which will come and go. It has to do with the entire scope of the political atmosphere of just having a two-party system, which dumbs everything down, forces people into two choices, and is not productive at all. And yes, I know labels are important for, labeling. That's their purpose, is to call a group what it is. My qualm is not with having something called the right or called the left, because that's inevitable, right? I'm not saying we should get rid of all labels, but being defined by a label, being defined by a group, to the point where that's how you think and that's what you want all the time, instead of thinking independently, that's toxic, and I think that's societal suicide if we continue down that path to the point where we're not able to get anything done or actually, focus on the real issues because of these preset notions of political affiliation. Why is it that for every political race, not just in the US, but all over the world, it seems to wind down to the two last idiots left standing, and we have to choose between which one is less evil? Part of it is because people are being funneled into a very binary political system of you either choose this or this, and there's nothing in between. And you know what else? When you're stuck in that political party agenda way of thinking, and both sides are going at it, everyone loses. Because people are blindsided by the overlapping flaws and issues that both parties or both candidates have. And oftentimes these issues and flaws are way more important than the differences these political candidates and parties have. It's almost like it's a distraction to keep people busy with a smear campaign against the other group rather than focus on the actual issues. For example, in the US, while people are caught up in the fabricated conflict of red versus blue, they don't realize that their rights are being stripped from under their feet. For as long back as I can remember in the US, both candidates and both parties have largely been in support of more wars, supportive of destroying the Constitution with things like the NSA and the Patriot Act and the NDA, all of which completely go against the rights of citizens and the foundations of the Constitution, which are the things that should be the most important to people, yet these issues never get brought up in the mainstream media. Why? Because, again, they want to keep people distracted with the right versus the left. It's time that people all over the world took their heads out of the sand and actually focused on solving the real issues with the intentions of solving them for the greater good of humanity, not for the greater good of their party, their political affiliation, or some sort of group or movement they're promoting. Being married to certain ideologies stifles independent thought, intellectual thinking, and actual problem solving. All it really does is promote smear campaigns and elementary insults at the other side. If you don't believe me, just go watch one of these clown shows they call a presidential debate from the last several years. Again, I know labels serve a purpose, and I'm not saying to get rid of them, but think larger than your party, than your group, than what you label yourself as, because you're limiting yourself when you define yourself by your party. And at the end of the day, there should be no right or left or red or blue, because we're all in this together. We should be looking to solve problems for the betterment of everybody, for whatever makes the most sense. Yes, people are going to disagree on how to solve these issues, but it should not turn into an us versus them campaign. Because right now, in the state that US politics and even world politics is in, if there was an asteroid estimated to hit Earth and wipe us all out within 60 days, and we had the technology to stop it, I'm sure the disagreements between the political parties of what is the best way to destroy this asteroid would eventually lead to just another smear campaign, not even talking about the real issue, and before we could agree on a solution to take out the asteroid, it would have already collided with Earth, destroying everything in its path, the ensuing nuclear fallout wiping out all of humanity, and Earth would have turned into a smoldering ball of dust. Hey, maybe that's what happened to Mars. There's a great quote from George Orwell in my favorite book, 1984, and it goes, "There was truth and there was untruth, and if you clung to truth, even against the whole world, you were not mad." And I think this holds especially true in the confusing world of identity politics that we live in today. Stop limiting yourself by your political label, stop falling into the trap of tribalism, stop limiting your perspective, open your mind and think of the bigger picture, or else an asteroid hurtling towards Earth might be the end of us all. I'm Glink, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.
We've got to keep our eyes open for any sign of enemy activity. I can't have you not paying attention. You have to be alert, constant vigilance, composed, attentive. See, that's much better.